Y'all are gonna wait for me for just a second here so I can adjust this just a tiny bit. When I put the phone up, it's too tall in some cases, and I've got to run a charging cord just because my phone's kind of dying. So that's where this is coming from. And this is like too bright. That's not bright enough. So all the technical crap here while I get all my stuff going. So I kind of had this idea going around of like, what would your life have been like had you not had any school, right? I thought about this morning, and at like, I don't know, 3:30. What would everybody's life be like had they not gone to school and then learned what the system wanted to teach you, right? Okay, I mean, so follow what I mean by this. Because you're born naturally a scientist, right? Like that's like your default setting is to go around and put stuff in your mouth, when you're a little kid, and to smell things, taste. I mean, that's just naturally what you do, and it takes enormous amounts of effort on the school system's part to get you to see something that wasn't there, or to get you to look past what you're seeing directly and then see some bullshit that they've been peddling, as like, oh, well, yeah, hey, I mean, like, this is the way things are, right? And then so you see past it because, or you see what they're telling you to see because you're rewarded. It's sort of like your dog psychology, right? It's how you train a dog. You give them treats and so on, and you reinforce the positive behavior. This is just basic stuff, and this is stuff that I've covered before in the past. I know other people have, I'm sure, but I was thinking about that today, about, again this morning, about like, what would life have been like? Where would people be? Because you're told that you're stupid and lazy now. I'm talking to Americans predominantly, but I mean, this goes to the broader part of the Western civilization as a whole. But Americans, like 10 days ago, got told that they were just lazy and stupid and couldn't do anything, and so therefore they had to be replaced by these people that would just show up and do everything for them, right? Yet, it's this, why is it that everybody wants to come here? And I've done other videos on this, and I'm pretty, I think some of you saw probably some of the more recent work that I did, recent videos that I put out, where I was pretty straight about that, where I'm just like, well, dude, I mean, if you need to have cheap labor, why don't you just go to those countries and stay there? Just go there, stay there, set up shop, and leave Americans alone. let all those factories just sit. Somebody will take them over eventually, and they'll do something else with them that's actually profitable and doesn't need to be bailed out by constant amounts of, constant bailing out of printing fiat dollars, right? So, like, why not do something like that? Just makes sense to me. I mean, if America seriously is just populated entirely by a bunch of people who are just lazy and stupid. So, no, I mean, the school system is what pushes a lot of it, I think. And so I got to thinking about this, like all these people, myself included, who, for a while, I got kicked out very quickly. I got kicked out of every school I've ever been into, which is actually, really good. And eventually they just left me alone. They got the message. It went through that, like, leave me alone. I'm following the scientific method, not this nonsense where I'm constantly being told that if I'm obedient, I get a treat, right? If I'm disobedient, then I get punished. Okay, well, that's not exactly how. Again, like I said, that's how you punish dogs. That's how you train animals. Humans are animals to an extent, but like that's the kind of thing that's actually happening. And it's happening to a lot of people, and some people are starting to wake up to this now. Some people are starting to put it together that, like, yeah, maybe getting a couple $100,000 worth of student loans isn't really worth it, and I would suggest to you that it is not worth it. Absolutely not worth it at all, in the slightest. The ROI just isn't there unless you have a very specific plan of what to do, and then you're going to run that business yourself. That's going to be the problem, because most people aren't going to run the businesses themselves, aren't they? right? I mean, it's like you're going to rely on everybody else to run it for you. So, yeah, I think so my opinion hasn't really changed on that. I think that if you're going to do something like that, you're going to have to listen to fireworks, just because it's not New Year's Eve, but I mean, it's still like down here in Texas, people will run fireworks for 15 days after New Year's. So anyway, just what I was thinking, what's up with all of that? And I've been tweeting about this on the other platform, formerly known as Birdsite, where I've been asking these questions, what's up with this? Do college degrees make people smart? Because I don't think that's the case. I've just met too many people with MBAs that I'm not impressed. I don't know, I've dealt with it a little too much in business. And so I just have to ask these kinds of questions. And I still maintain, if you need to have all this cheap labor, which is the other topic of conversation that I've been kind of going on. I've been chewing on this for a few days now. It's like, dude, why wouldn't you just go to those other countries then? And just leave Americans the hell alone? Because they're afraid of tariffs, more than likely. Well, okay, then, imagine, for example, and since this isn't the other site, this is TikTok, I can actually openly ask this question. Let's assume for just whoever is watching this, you immigrate to a country, to the U.S., or actually to any country, right? You immigrate to some other country because you think it's going to be better there. You convince their country to give tax money, billions of dollars of tax money to you. And then you turn around and complain and say, well, the people here just kind of suck. So, we need to import more people into your country from some other country, like a third party country, not from my home country, but, from some other country, because you people suck. How would that be received by put yourself in that position. How would that be received by anybody, right? My question would be dude, if I were the leader of that country, I'd be like, oh, what the hell? Why the hell did you come here then? Why didn't you go to the land of super cheap geniuses? If that's what you're claiming, then why wouldn't you do that? And again, anybody who knows my work and has followed me for any length of time, has nothing to do with race with me. This isn't a race thing for me. This is a financial issue for me. This is a finance issue for Americans. Because again, as an American, I'm speaking predominantly to Americans, but this applies to other countries, right? It would apply to those countries if they spoke English too, right? Anybody who speaks English and can follow along with what I'm talking about, all of this applies to you too. So anyway, let's scroll down here. There's zillions and zillions of comments apparently already. And it's early too, so we'll see what happens. You guys probably don't have me for about an hour, something like that. We'll see how it goes. Let's see here. So welcome to everybody. That's just it. Everything you learn in schools and colleges are fake. Yeah, a lot of it. See, and that's just it. I think that a lot of it was real at one point, and it was relevant at one point in history. So let's say that you were a business owner or a businessman in 1900, right? And you became really successful because of how well you ran your business or your farm and your business. And so you became really successful, right? And so then what would happen is that people, the universities might say, hey, why don't you come and teach? Since you're retired now, you don't really need to work anymore. Your time is your own. I don't want to use the retire. Your time is your own. You can kind of do whatever you'd like, right, with your life. You can live life on your terms. Hey, why don't you come and teach these younger people, what you know, right? And this would apply to medical knowledge and everything. And so, of course, the knowledge that someone's teaching from that perspective is cutting edge, right? Of course it is, because it's right from the horse's mouth. It's right from the guy who has all the actual experience. Cut 2, 3, or 4 generations later, it's just a bunch of people teaching what that guy taught in 1900, right? You kind of see the problem with that. So, self-serving, yeah, it is, and that's just it. College is a self-serving business model now. There's just money. It's no different anymore nowadays. The universities, I put them on par with the airport Marriott hucksters, the guys that that are at the airport Marriott teaching you how to get rich in real estate. I put them in pretty much the same category, regurgitating the same crap over and over. Let's see here. Hey bro, you're live. I am. briefly. Again, I'm probably not going to do the 2-hour thing tonight. That's probably a little too much for me and stuff. I got, allergies bug me down here. I'm kind of roughly in allergy time. Plus, if the fireworks continue, you'll be able to hear me anyway. So, I made sure I got press MBA. It's not regular MBA. Yeah, I know. I mean, that's just it. I mean, if you and that's what I'm pointing out. Like, dude, if you can pay this stuff off, then that's the way you go about it, right? I mean, if you can do a lot of this stuff, then you pay it off. So. And that's always the better way to go. Or if you can pay, ideally you pay as you go, or like in the old days, the boomer days, right? Boomers, a lot of them could just go to college and they would just get a job and just pay for it as they went. They didn't leave school with like just mountains of debt. Maybe unless you were a physician or something, but even so, it was still a little bit more realistic for you to be able to pay it off. You said there'd be a better opportunities in America. For youth abroad than here. You know what? Maybe pending. We'll see. I mean, the passport bros, like I said before, and I pointed this out. It depends on what you're doing in other countries, right? I mean, remember, other countries aren't as stupid, right? They're not run by the guys who play dumb. They're not run by the orange clown man. They're run by people who actually know what the hell they're doing and I don't mean that in a altruistic kind of happy socialist kind of way. I mean, these are businessmen and women. They know what they're doing. And one of the things that they know is that, if you're going to come into their country, you need to be a net benefit to them, right? And if you're not, they're not going to let you in. And net benefit meaning like, hey, you're bringing some money with you, right? You're bringing some kind of like extraordinary talent or something here that we can't get locally, that it's like impossible for us to find. That is not the case with the H-1B situation in the U.S., right? I mean, because they all came to the American. So let me see if I got this right. You send a bunch of people from your country to the U.S. to go to the universities in the U.S., but the people who lived in the U.S., who went to the universities in the U.S., they're not smart enough. The people, this, none of their argument makes any sense, and that's why you have to have this Elon nonsense. If you've been following it on former Birdside, if you've been following any of that nonsense, he's now changed the algorithm because so many people have basically put him in like hyper checkmate with that nonsense. Because once you start cross-examining, you find out, yeah, it's a mile wide and a hair's breadth deep, and there's nothing there. It's purely surfacey nonsense arguments that's just like, well, the only reason that you don't want this is because of race. No, has nothing to do with that. At least not from my perspective. Nothing to do with that. For me, it's purely finance related, especially when you see so many millennials. Again, you cannot scroll TikTok for more than 5 minutes and you will see a millennial on there complaining about like, dude, how am I supposed to like pay for bills? And then you want me to buy a house and a car and have kids and like dude, and it's like every single day, and everybody knows that. Let's see, they're not on our spectrum. Yeah, probably not. Greed, yes. I mean, greed is always a problem. Greed's always been a problem throughout all of human history, though. That's not a new thing. People will always be greedy. Greedy won't. Greed, no matter what you do, is always going to be there, and there is not going to be any system that will ever get rid of that because it's part of human nature. It's embedded. It's hardwired into you, and it's not. And by the way, a way to maybe think of greed a little bit, just my opinion, because I'm not a good evil guy. I think it's a little more blurred than that. Is think of it like this: you need conservation of energy, right? Every aspect of human existence is, and not just human existence, but all things want to have conservation of energy. Okay, this is like hard science. Like anybody can observe this. You don't need a book or anything. You can just go observe this. People, creatures, doesn't matter. If they can get something more out than what they put in, then they're going to do that. If you think about it like caloric intake, if you think of it like that, if you think of everything, energy as like calories. If the goal is to get more calories in, then you expend it to go get the calories, right? Okay, so that's kind of the way to look at it. So when part of human nature or part of existence is like, hey, if I can get more calories out of you, right, then I'm going to do that. And that's just part of the deal, right? That's kind of how it works. So it's like you can call it greed. But remember, we talked about this like on Christmas Eve when I talked about the whole Scrooge thing. It's like, when Dickens envisions this Ebenezer Scrooge character, it's not. It goes beyond just wanting to have more than somebody else. It goes under the category of greed for the sake of greed, which makes it such an interesting literary character. Did you already talk about that Tesla? No, I actually haven't talked about that. You're talking about the Tesla in front of the hotel, I'm assuming, the infamous Tesla explosion. I don't know how much TikTok allows you to say, because I don't know TikTok's algorithm that well. I've been told so many different crazy things. So I will just give you my initial thought. I don't know that there's enough information there to really have an opinion one way or the other, at least from my perspective, right? Does it seem a little odd? It definitely seems coincidental. It definitely seems like an omen, if for lack of a better word. But do I think that there's something like really I don't know. I think that is something that truly could have just been, an unfortunate situation with these guys that, some people get, they become very, self-destructive, right? PTSD and so on. And rather than, they become, suicidal rather than homicidal. And now one could make the argument that that's better than, better than homicide. I don't know. I mean, it depends. I suppose it depends on which way you're directing that energy. And I have to skirt that carefully, at least on this platform. Maybe on another platform, I can go into that a little bit more unplugged. But yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I just don't think that there's enough information to really be able to say one way or the other what really. I think the simplest answer is probably the correct one, at least in that specific situation. Sort of like the Korean airliner that came down, that did the belly landing. More than likely, it's looking like that was just like seriously like pilot error. Like they literally forgot to put the landing gear down, is what it kind of seems like, just from what little bit of, ATSB stuff that I've seen. So, Devil's Agenda started in San Francisco, probably years ago, actually. Dude thinks he has something interesting to say. Yeah, I don't care, man. I mean, just keep scrolling. Like, why would you even waste the energy to type something that stupid with your thumbs? Let's see here. I'm not picking on whoever. I'm just pointing out, like, that just if that was actually directed at me, it's like, dude, why would you waste the energy? Like, I mean, like, why waste the time? There just seems like there's other things that you could be doing. Will the economy get better? Well, I suppose that depends on what you mean by better. That's, like I said, that's the number 3. It's actually becoming the number 2 question I get as a random guy on the internet. It's probably the number 2 question I get is, what do I think? Like, when is this all going to stop? When is this economic, torture going to end? And my answer has not changed. It's the same answer I've given a long time ago, which is that no, it's not going to change until people want it to change. Like you're going to have to will that change, meaning that you're going to have to let the U.S. dollar hegemony go away, and there's only one way to do that, and that's to watch to try and encourage the collapse of it. It's not going to collapse if they can keep importing cheap labor. I have done, and I'm not talking to you specifically, I'm just talking to the ether at this point with that answer. But it's like, I've answered that question probably 60 times. And it's like, my answer isn't going to change. It's that when you keep allowing them to prop the Ponzi scheme up, I've been noticing this more and more. A bunch of people took something that I said about 6 months ago, they took it wrong. And they ran with it. And they're like, oh my God, it's the birth rate is to try and prop up capitalism and the Ponzi scheme. That is not what I said. That is not what I said. I pointed out that when you have a birth rate that expands that fast, talking about the boomers, businesses and governments tend to get used to that kind of business model, of having that kind of income. That is supposed to shrink. When that shrinks, you're supposed to see all of this start to collapse. That's what you're supposed to be seeing. So that would be, to answer your question, is like, would the economy getting better would be everything collapsing, right? It would be all the prices collapsing. It would be all of this stuff, shrinking. I don't think that the powers that be, no matter who you elected, are going to allow that. They're not going to allow the U.S. economy to have its own, a natural reset, not a hard reset, but a natural reset, which would be, there's not enough people to support all of these ridiculous rents, right? Again, not a day goes by. I don't see it on TikTok. People saying like, dude, what's up with the rents in this country? Like, dude, nobody makes this kind of... Yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah, I see it too. With just in my business, I talk to people and I hear because I have some customers that have a lot of money, and I'll hear every now and again, I don't go into it because it's not my business, but every now and again people volunteer too much information, and I'll hear these $6,700 a month mortgage payments. That's the mortgage. That's not including their taxes, or if they have PMI, or if they have anything else. It's like, that's not including their insurance. That's probably $1,000 a month at this point, or more in some cases, I'm hearing. So when I hear these numbers, I'm like, who the hell is making this kind of money to pay these absurd mortgages and these are not giant palatial estates. These are like just kind of maybe slightly big houses in kind of in a roughly nice neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I do the same thing that everybody else does, going, where are you getting this money to do all of this? And so it's like, dude, foot picks? What are you guys doing on the side, apparently, to make this kind of money? Because the average incomes in the U.S., the median income, doesn't really support all of this. So it's just like my criticism of the landlord bros, the rent seeker bros out there that, well, I just want I want the top tier tenants. Yeah, I know, you sound like those delusional 22-year-old girls at the clubs, right? That want to have they want to find some 6'5" guy that's got a lot of money. It's like, dude, I mean, you guys are crazy. You're all looking for the same stuff, and you're being ridiculous about it. Yeah, I would like to see everything, start to actually cool off a bit, so that people could pay a lot of debt off. And I'm talking about normal people, the plebs out here, all of us normies. That's who you want to see all this stuff. It's why I get frustrated when I hear things like, we're going to lower the corporate taxes. I don't care about corporate taxes. I care about personal income taxes. Well, I thought we were getting rid of the IRS. Wasn't that part of the deal? Yeah. All the systems run on U.S. reserve currency. Yeah, I know, that's exactly right, and it has to do with getting other countries to keep taking cheap U.S. dollars, and it's really horrible. Part of me wants to be conspiratorial about it and say, well, that the reason a lot of these third world countries they're like deliberately kept poor. And how you do that? You deliberately put some crazy dictator in charge of things who really doesn't care about the country. What he cares about is building himself a palace, right? Because I mean, like we see this kind of stuff, right? How foreign aid works, right? Ron Paul talked about this. Foreign aid is taking money from poor people in a rich country and then giving it to rich people in a poor country. And that's what ends up happening. And it seems like all these dictators that the U.S. always backs, it's always these are not benevolent dictators. These are always like the worst scum of the earth people that they could find to put in charge of stuff. And they just wreck the country and keep people in poverty, so that way they're just an available source of cheap labor if the Americans get all too uppity about it. Hey, that's just an opinion, but I mean, it would certainly, the puzzle pieces would fit, right? If I were to push that agenda, and I'm not, I'm just pointing out that those puzzle pieces would actually fit. So higher education is important. What ruins it is the law. It is. I mean, well, and not only that. I mean, so what I was talking about, at least in terms of education, when you're bringing it up in that context, what I'm talking about, it isn't just the loans that ruin it. Because you could say, because part of the argument that I hear from a lot of the left is like, well, why can't we have free education? First of all, there's no such thing as free. You guys know me. That is not a thing. It's never been a thing. You will always pay for something somehow. In fact, usually you pay the most for something that's free. That's usually what costs you this is 36 years in business. Everything that I've ever thought I got a really good smoking deal on, it usually ends up costing me more money than I just paid. It's kind of how it works, okay? Rarely have I run into a situation where the inverse is the case. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the idea of of education, like this idea, like, well, I would also argue you don't want a free education, because free education then becomes kind of worth what you paid for it. So if you didn't pay anything for it, then what is it really worth? That's another problem. The other side is just what I was just talking about a few minutes ago, which is the people that end up teaching it. Are you getting an actual education, or are you just having somebody read from a book that was written like 100 years ago and update it, polish it a little bit, change the wording a little bit, and then regurgitate it to you? Like, that's, I'm sorry, but that's not real education to me. Real education, it happens out in the world. That happens out, like, really doing something, like, for real, and getting your head kicked in a couple of times, you know, and having to eat bad decisions occasionally. Right now, obviously, in the medical sector, that's a little harder to do, but that actually could be solved by just the same way that they handle it for being a pilot. So for my fellow pilots out there, myself included, but I mean, like, you know, my fellow pilots out there, right? You know how this works. Who are you trained by? Every pilot you have ever met in your whole life was trained by a pilot. And that pilot has to sign off and say, yeah, I think that this, if I sign this guy's book and he's good for high horsepower, complex, you know, multi-engine, etc., has the, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the kind of stuff that other, and so if something happens, right, most of, and this, the FAA is one of those strange organizations that kind of actually works in terms of government, and I hate to say it that way, but it kind of does, in that, what do? They go directly, if there's an incident, they go directly to the guy who trained him and say, okay, hey, you signed off on their book, so que pasa? What's up with this? What's up with this falling down to the sky thing? You know, like, or this mid-air collision thing? And like, what's up with that? So, yeah, I mean, I mean, I hope that makes some kind of sense, but yeah, the education aspect of it, the debt, no, that needs to go away. And prices actually on education would come way down if there were no more loans. That's just reality. If there were no more student loans, then prices have to come down, right? Because just like everything, like the reason why everybody keeps seeing prices go up is because there are banks and underwriters that will continue to write these ridiculous loans. I saw some story today on, once again, former Bird site. Some woman, it was a story about, she bought a new car from GM Financial. So somebody there greenlit this deal, and she paid on it for 4 years, and she still owed like $40,000 or $50,000 on this car after 4 years of payments. Who greenlit that deal? That's insane. That anybody would, that any banker would greenlight something like that. And it was like $1,400 a month payments. It was some crazy payment. Like, no way I would pay that much. Dude, come on. So yeah, I mean, and this is, so let's see here. You have the skill of talking fast and saying nothing. I don't care, man. I mean, like, dude, if that's really the problem with you, you know, I mean, let's just keep right on going. Why would you stay? If I see you again, I'm gonna nuke you, because it's like there's just no point in having you here. Let's see here. What are those filters for? Behind me? Those are for a CAT engine. Those are for CAT C16. So, or C15, C16 engine. Let's see here. They're not going to get rid of the, no, probably not. Probably not. I'd like to think so. Once again, for economic reasons, I'd like to think that they actually are going to do that they are going to, but I remember I've talked about this before. America first is not Americans first. That is not the same thing. That's a whole different kettle of fish. When you say Americans, you know, Americans first, when you're talking about the people of America, when you say we're going to put the people first, that means ahead of all these companies. That means ahead of all these bureaucrats and all the, like, that's what that actually means. That means ahead of all the companies that want all this cheap labor. Again, if you want cheap labor, go to where cheap labor is and stay there. But, so, no, I don't know that they're going to do that. I mean, I think that they're going to, I think that my opinion hasn't changed on that. I think what you're going to see is maybe a couple million deportations. And Trump is going to grandstand on that. A bunch of others are going to be given like green light visas to stay here indefinitely and be a. So remember, we talked about this before. AI is just globalist speak for cheap labor. Robots is just globalist speak for cheaper labor. That's all it means. So they'll keep importing. Yeah, they will. I mean, it's just kind of how it is. I think most Americans at this point are so upset about all of this that, like, maybe by 2028. I mean, who knows? Maybe by 2028, people are angry enough. And by the way, I mean, let me also put the fear of God into Gen Xers, Millennials, and Zoomers, because that's pretty much who's watching this. I don't think there's any Boomers that watch me. I think I've pretty well terrified most of them. But yeah, Gen X, Millennials, and Zoomers going forward, right? This is on you now. You, like, demographically speaking, the number, just voting block numbers, it's not on Boomers anymore. Collectively, X, Millennials, and Zoomers, and even some of the alphas that may be coming up, hitting voting age, now outnumber the Boomers. Finally, after like years of madness, years of silver alert, years of that. They finally outnumber. So, like, going forward, this is on everybody else now. This is just on everybody else's petty squabbles. Boomers are kind of, by that time, are not going to be the giant monolithic juggernaut voting block. So it's going to come down to who got imported into the country, and then were they allowed to vote. And of course, now you're going to have to outvote all those people. So it depends on how many people they import into the country. So it's not free education. It's yeah, I know it is. It's sort of like those jobs. Like, we also those jobs. Like, back, remember the old Twitter days, where there was that girl that was like, she says, here's a day of my life at working at this company, at this tech company. I showed up at the mimosa bar and I had a morning mimosa. Then I went to the omelet bar and I had an omelet. Then I felt stressed, so I went to the puppy therapy room. And then after from the puppy therapy room, I decided I had to buckle down and get some work done. So I answered an email. But then I was feeling, I needed a drink, so I went to the rooftop lounge and had like some more daytime drinking. And then I went down to the massage room where Enrique gave me a back massage and stuff. It's like, that's not a job. That's jobbery, right? That's daycare. That's where you send, frankly, very unproductive people to pretend to work. And yeah, it's jobbery is what I call those. They're not actual work. Most of the stuff that I do and guys like me do on a daily basis, average person, they probably wouldn't be able to move the next day. So, and that's not saying that I'm super strong or that. It's just, I'm like, it's just, you get used to it. It's sort of like that. There was a meme that was like, it showed like the juiced up thugs. Guys look like they just got out of the joint. They're all jacked up. And it shows it says guy who works at the gym, 5 days a week, versus average construction worker. Like, yeah, there's, it's kind of it. So, let's see here. CDL mills, yeah, that is a problem for the CDL. I know I have a few truck drivers that follow me. Other guys, OTR guys that follow some of my work, and they know it. They know what I'm talking about when we talk about the CDL mills. I mean, these companies that just churn these people out, and they get you in huge amounts of debt. I did a video on that one time, I don't know, about 3-4 weeks ago, where I talked about that. I tried to explain to people that are wanting to go into the truck driving industry, just beware of what you're getting yourself into, because usually it's just a scheme to get you owing them a bunch of money. It's like, yeah, you got a CDL now. You now owe us a bunch of money. So let's put you in this truck where you're going to be miserable with the other guy, and you're going to do team driving, and they will run that truck into the ground. And then there still won't be a job opening for you as a solo driver because you're too new. And so there's guys out there that have 10, 15 years experience that you're competing with those guys, right? That's who your actual competition is. The guys, guys like me that have years of experience. Clean driving records, know how to do everything, maintain our own trucks. Like, you're competing against those guys, and there's a lot of them, by the way. It's not a small number of guys. It's a big number. And so then they say, oh, well, hey, we don't have a truck for you to go into, a job for you to go into, but you can lease this truck. Here, take on some of our debt. And You know, that's how they do it. So like there was a DM I got from somebody who asked me about that, and I just said, listen, you can take whatever job you want, just make sure that you're not agreeing to take on any of their debt. None of their debt. Let their debts are their own. Don't start taking on their debt and agreeing to pay back that truck, because they will run you into the ground and just take all your money, because they don't care. None of these companies care. They're run by they are run by some of the sickest people that they can find to work in these industries. It's really bad. And again, talk to drivers who've been doing it for a long time. They will all tell you the exact same thing. Like they are really some of the worst people they could possibly find. Let's see here. I'm not sure who you're referring to on that one, so I'm just going to kind of keep scrolling here. If I miss you, I'm sorry. Just like repost it if you had a question or something like that. Education is costly. Yeah, it is. Thank you. I have no idea what those things are either. I had like bullhorns or something one time. I don't know. Yes, Gen Xers, rock on. The Gen Xers, the only generation that like at age 10 turned 30, and at the age 50 they're still 30. It's a weird generation of people, man. I just like at 10 years old, Gen Xers, like, and this is hard I think for alphas to, particularly Zoomers and alphas, it's hard for you to relate to this, but like Gen Xers were like these like every kid was treated like a bastard stepchild. I mean, like even by your own parents. Like, it's just how everybody was treated. And it's largely just because like most of the boomers, boomers were young parents. Many of them were in their 20s and maybe their very, very, very early 30s. And so many of them were put yourself in that position, right? Like, it's sort of like I remember becoming a parent myself. I think I was 17. I think I just turned 17. Anyway, like the fact that I'm responsible for the upbringing of another human being that's completely ridiculous, right? So it's just how it is. Blue collars will build the country. It did, yeah. And the thing is that's why I get that's another frustration. Actually, I'm glad that you bring this up. Whenever I talk about like people need to sort of take their country back, and it's not about go work for some company. It's when I say that I'm talking about buy your own equipment and build stuff, as your own business. Small businesses are what really built the country. And I'm not talking about the industrial side of that. I'm talking about the beginning stages. In other words, the reason why the U.S. became this absurd powerhouse between like 1800 and like 1861, the reason it became this massive powerhouse was because the people kept what they made, right? So, right, like in other words, there's no need to have some crazy socialist nonsense, and I use the term socialist advisedly. I'm just using that so that way you guys know what I'm talking about. Where it's like, oh, well, everything needs to be a human right. Anything that I like has to be a human right. Anything that I don't like has to be illegal, like that weird nonsense that people do. That you didn't have any of the so-called human rights like that. What you did have, though, was you kept all your money. So whatever you did earn, you kept it. You didn't have ridiculous inflation to deal with. You didn't have any of this, right? People were still having kids, and you still didn't have all this giant inflation. Why? Because the currency wasn't, because the currency was gold coin, right? Or gold dust. So that was the reason you didn't have that kind of inflation. It wasn't until later on that the monetary inflation, again, I'm not talking price inflation, I'm talking monetary inflation, became a thing with the counterfeiters. But prior to that, all of those small businesses, small farms, independent people doing their thing and keeping, most importantly, keeping what they made, which means you don't need to have so-called free education because you can pay for it yourself. Because you have the money yourself. You can educate your own kids. You can bring in a tutor. Who was it? I think it was Jefferson or Franklin. I think it was Franklin. What his dad used to do, this is, I think it's Franklin. Again, somebody out there on the internet's gonna like hard correct me on this one, but I think it was Franklin. His dad, when he was a little kid, his dad would bring like people into his house like once a week, and they would have dinner, and he would kind of like interview these people and ask them about their life and to explain their positions and explain all this stuff. And what he was doing was he was using that as a way of educating his kids by proxy, because they would learn lessons, some good, some cautionary, right? But they would learn stuff from just listening to other people explain something. That's very effective. That's very, because people learn by osmosis anyway. Kids learn incredibly fast, right? Now adults have the benefit of context, which means that, you know, as adults, when you're learning something, you have the benefit of context. That works for and against you, though, because if you have no context, right, then you're just learning something raw, right? Now you have no idea if it's real or not. You're just learning it. But if you have context, then you can say, oh, okay, I see. I've run into something similar to that, and you put context. Your mind sort of fills in the blanks. Again, that's good and bad, because sometimes that can be working against you. But overall, in my opinion, I think it's 50-50. What's the account names? Each platform's financial. It's, yeah. I mean, you can. Financial Fizz, PHYS is one of them on there and stuff. And I'm also on Noster. I don't know if I can say that on TikTok, but I don't think that one probably flies under the radar. So, because that's not really in a social media platform. My father said if he knew that there was where society's going, it would have taught us differently. Yeah, exactly. That's the case, right? And you know, for years I've talked about this idea that you're born in the middle of a movie, and you rely on the people in your life, the adults in your life, you hope that they've been paying attention to the same movie they're about to describe to you, right? So if you show up into the middle of the movie, you're hoping that your parents or grandparents or somebody was paying close attention, and they could bring you up to speed on what's going on, so that way you don't get shoved out into the meat grinder of the world where everybody is running. Remember, what we talked about in the beginning of this whole thing is people like to conserve energy. Right, so there's a soft form of cannibalism. I'm using that term, you know, tongue in cheek, okay? But it's like, yeah, it's a type of energy siphoning, because people are going to do that if you let them, right? This is why if you have a hard currency, of course, it keeps honest people honest. Honest people are kept honest by a currency they just cannot manipulate. There is no chemical composition that you can put together. There's no different amounts of chemicals you can put together for example purposes to create gold. It is a base element, which is why it was chosen. And silver and other, I'm not going to get into that debate, because it's not really a debate as far as I'm concerned. It's more of just a difference of opinion. But that's one of the reasons it was chosen, because it is a base element and there's no way to manipulate that. It either weighs or it doesn't. It's pure or it's not. You have it or you don't. That's the end of it. There is no more discussion beyond that. And that keeps honest people honest. Same thing with the orange internet money. Again, we don't say the B word here on TikTok, because then the algorithms freak out. But, you know, but yeah, it's the same basic idea. It's you either have it or you don't. That's it. There's no borrowing a bunch of fake money conjured from nothing. Remember, we talked about Henry Ford. It wasn't me who brought that up, by the way. There was a guy on TikTok who brought that up. And I'd forgotten all about that story, but he talked about Henry Ford when Durant, I think his name was Walter Durant. I'm going to get in trouble too. Someone's going to hard correct me on that, I'm sure. But I think that's what his name was. Anyway, he was the CEO, or what we would call at the time the president of General Motors. And he wrote a letter to Ford saying, hey, I want to buy Ford Motor Company. And thinking that Ford would just blow him off and say, no, I'm not selling you nothing, dude. I mean, like, you know, I'm Henry Ford. You know, I'm like the ultimate uber capitalist kind of guy. And instead, he shocked him and he sent him back a letter and he said, yep, I'll sell you $10 million, no problem at all. I need $2 million of GM stock, but I want $8 million in cash. And Durant went, oh, this is my chance. This is my chance. Like this would be the equivalent today of like Elon Musk agreeing to sell somebody Tesla for like, you know, $50 million. Like you'd be crazy not to take it. But there was a catch. The catch was the $8 million in cash had to be paid in gold coinage. It had to be paid in physical gold. Not one bank would loan it to him. Durant went everywhere. He could not find one bank that would even consider. He couldn't even put banks together where they would give up the possession of their gold. There was just no way they would do it, even though they had the Federal Reserve by then. Because it was I want to say like 1927 or something like that, or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact date. You know, but like, yeah, that was a real thing. And the reason Ford agreed to this is because he knew for a fact they could never do it. He could never pull that off, because hard currency keeps honest people honest, and there's no way to manipulate it. Thus, Ford remained the owner of his company. Whatever else the man, hey man, like you can, whatever else the man is, it doesn't make any difference. But he was no fool, and he knew what he was doing, and he knew that GM could not pull that off. He knew that the banks would never give him that kind of gold. You think the economy continues to tank under Trump, or does he turn up the printing press? Yes. That is both my professional and my personal opinion. I think that the deficit type spending is going to be spectacular. I don't think that there's any way out of this. I think that the whole idea behind Doge, that whole Doge thing, government, or what is it? Yeah, government accountability, or whatever it is. I don't remember what the acronym was. Anyway, I think that what's going to happen is that, like, oh look, let's get a bunch of people to quit their jobs, and then we can amortize it out and say, oh look, we got a bunch of people, we closed down this department, this. They're not going to get rid of a bunch of crazy laws. I mean, God forbid they do that. No, the laws will be there to selectively enforce to Americans who are a pain in the butt to them, right? Pain in the butt people, they're going to bring out all the laws, and they'll bring out all 80 million laws and start charging people with all kinds of crazy crimes. But they'll get rid of a lot of departments, and then they say, oh look, we saved all this money. Then what they do is they extrapolate that out into the future based on future budgeting and say, oh my God, look, we lowered the deficit by $3 trillion. That's not what happened. That's in theory. It's sort of like a pro forma statement from a company. You know what a pro forma means? It starts with this. Once upon a time, in a land where physics don't matter, this company made a lot of money. That's what a pro forma statement means. And so this is the same thing that they're going to do. It'll be smoke and mirrors. It'll be budgeting gimmicks and so forth, which will allow them to say, oh, look, since we saved $3 trillion, look, we'll just print $2 trillion now. You saved $3 trillion theoretical dollars that didn't really exist in the first place, but you're going to conjure $2 trillion real dollars and then shove it in the economy. And then, of course, once it gets shoved in, where does it go? It always goes to the big guys, right? Why? Because they own all the means of production, right? Remember, we talked about small businesses. Small businesses are what you actually want because then the money goes into the pockets of the owners. The guys who actually run the machines that farm the fields, so like the money goes into their pockets, right? And they spend it at their discretion or they save it. When you have all of these giant oligarchs that own everything, right? And of course, how do they own it? They own it because they printed a bunch of dollars and they bought it from a bunch of World War II gen and boomer people who didn't know what the hell they were doing, who sold off the entire country's future for paper money because they weren't smart enough, like Henry Ford, to say, pay me in gold. And of course, that would have chased them all off. Same thing with orange internet money today. If every American said, I'm not going to work tomorrow, I'm not going to work Monday morning, I'm not going to work until you pay me in orange internet money, you'd see the country come to a standstill because all their fake money goes out the window. It becomes worthless. You could do it with gold too. I mean, either way, but I mean, like, that's exactly what happened. But of course, if you did that, then they say, oh my God, there's a labor shortage. We need to flood the country with, legals. This is why I keep pointing out, you have to cut off asymmetric access to all this cheap labor in other countries, right? Or you need to tell them to get out. Get your company, pack all your crap up, and go there. Why do you want to be here bothering Americans with all of this? Yeah, I mean, like, are some of you kind of following the logic with this? This isn't my logic. This is just what's happening. This is what they're doing. This is how these guys think. These are business people. They think exactly the way I think. And if I were on the other side of the chessboard, I would be doing those exact moves. In fact, I'd be better at it. Most of these guys, it's amateur hour for most of these guys. But I'm just telling you, that's the way you do that. So if you cut that stuff off, then all of that stuff changes. Ultimately, I think that the first omnibus spending bill, because the U.S. hasn't had a budget since 2007, you can look that up. I had to look it up myself. I think it's like 2007 or 2008, if I remember right. The U.S. has officially not had any budget. It's just print and spend, tax and spend. Nobody knows how much money's coming in. Nobody knows how much going out. It's just wild free for all. It's what Monopoly devolves into with 6-year-olds playing it. It's just kids throwing money at each other, right? That's exactly what's happened here. It's part of a psychosis, just like when you see President Silver Alert today handing out medals like they're candy to toddlers. Denzel being the exception. No disrespect to Denzel. I like Denzel. But, everybody, come on. I mean, and of course, Michael J. Fox, obviously. But I'm just saying that like the rest of it is just a bunch of politicians giving awards to other politicians before they're all going to look like Idi Amin. They're all going to have you remember Idi Amin? I can't remember what country he was in. Someone again, one of you older Xers will pull up pictures, and you'll know what I'm talking about. The guys, it's like he gave himself like all kinds of award. He was some leader of some country, and he gave him, and he had his whole military uniform was covered with medals. He was just covered from like head to toe, because he gave himself so many medals and awards over God knows what. Like, yeah, that's what it reminded me of. Just complete madness. It's if you want to use the term late stage, it's late stage empire collapse. Has nothing to do with capitalism. It's just empire collapsing. It's what happens when you have people who are rich and powerful begin to believe their own crap. They begin to believe them. In other words, they've managed to convince themselves in the mirror that everything they're doing is completely justified across the board, and so they start to believe it. And anybody who tells them anything different, well, then you're evil. We got to fire you, or we got to censor you. We can't have anything. Just like right now, with everybody's favorite billionaire. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. There's a Academy of Ideas video called on YT that talks about the mass psychosis and explains how it starts. It usually starts with the so-called ruling class, because they become completely detached from all the third and fourth generation trust fund kids are no different than third and fourth generation welfare kids. The mentality is the exact same, except unfortunately the third and fourth generation trust fund kids have a lot of unfortunate power, and they can do a lot of damage to a country, and they do every single time. Right. The next phase of this, of course, is send people out and arrest people. All kinds of, like that's just where this all eventually devolves to. And a bunch of people, a bunch of idiots, police and military, the two chief idiots among all of them. Yes, I called you guys idiots. Write it down and remember it forever, because I said that to you. Will go and enforce anything. There's nothing you guys won't enforce. You will enforce prima nocta if you're told to. I call it like I see it. And I have yet to see anything that suggests otherwise, because all the good ones quit like 10 years ago. They quit during COVID. That was like the acid test for some of those guys. They're like, oh, dude, I'm out of here. Forget this. We already know where this is going. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news on that, but that's just the truth. And, you know me. I mean, I'm going to tell you the truth. It's weird how someone who's actually willing to tell you the truth is devalued. I'm not saying I'm anything that I'm not. I'm just pointing out, like, if you want to, someone who's willing to tell you the truth, it's pretty valuable, if you understand that, because most people will never tell you the truth. Think of how many women out there, especially if you're good-looking women. Let's say you're a good-looking young woman. How many guys tell you the truth? Yeah. They'll massage the truth a little bit because they're trying to separate you from your clothing. But yeah, there's very few people that will actually tell you the truth. It's one of the benefits of age, actually. You get to be beekeeping age, and you start telling people the fucking truth, because like there's nothing I want from any of you. And one of the things you want to be bulletproof. Let me teach you something, whoever you are watching this. You know how you want to be completely bulletproof to everybody out there? When there's nothing anybody can give you on this planet that you would even want, you are absolutely bulletproof. You will never be nervous in front of anybody ever again, no matter who they are. Doesn't make any difference. Axel, it's the president on the phone. Tell him I'll call him back. I'm busy. Yeah, because don't care, right? There's nothing they can give me that I would particularly want. Marcus Aurelius, I've said this before, guys know me. Nothing you can buy is worth having, and nobody you can order around is worth knowing. I realize that can be taken two ways. I realize that, but I choose to take it on the other side and say, where it's like, from my position, it's like, no, I choose to take that meaning to say that, like, yeah, I mean, there's just anything that I would do if I were to ever pray for anything, if I believed in God, for example, and I were to ever ask for anything, it would be good health and long life and, keep all my hair, stuff like that, right? And not be like old, wrinkly, and pruny. It'd be stuff like that. It'd be stuff that I have like almost no control over to an extent when you get older. But that would be kind of what I would ask for. I don't know that I would ever ask for like riches or anything like that. I would ask for wisdom. I'd do that. I like that one idea. That's a great idea. But I don't know that I would ever ask for anything like, all the material crap, because I can go get the material crap myself. I don't mind the struggle to go get that. I don't mind the struggle to go don't make it myself. Mad Mike, owner-operator, yep. You know what I'm talking about. You've been there. You sat there waiting for the forklift guys to get off of break. Yeah. Let's see, it's hard to pay bills and the currency is divided by. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, your bills didn't go down. Your bills went up. Your currency lost 40% of its value, but your bills went up probably 100%. I just saw that video. It's ridiculous watching that video where there was that insurance adjuster. I don't know if anybody saw this. There was like an insurance adjuster on the roof of somebody's house, and the homeowner. They were trying to tell the homeowner. It wasn't an adjuster, excuse me. It was an insurance agent. He was worked for the insurance company, and the insurance company was trying to raise their insurance rates like insane, and so he was up there on top of the roof arguing with the roofer, the actual roofer, saying, and the roofer is like, dude, there's nothing wrong with this guy's roof. What are you doing? There's nothing up here that like is a problem. And they were trying to justify why they were raising this homeowner's insurance like 3 times over or something like that. Yeah. So when that kind of thing happens, what are you supposed to do? Your currency, is taking a bath. So there, in other words, notice that all the fees keep going up. Taxes keep going, like all that stuff keeps going up, except your incomes. Your incomes don't go up to commensurate to match with any of that stuff, right? And if you complain about it, oh, you're just lazy. Yeah, and I'm so glad, by the way, boomers, welcome to the party. That some of you are being told that now, which is really funny. From a Gen X standpoint, that's really hilarious that some of you are finally starting to get that, faced at you, like, well, you're just lazy, man. Why don't you go be a Walmart greeter? After 43 years of work at the same company that finally cut you loose at the end of it and gave you a cheap Timex. Yeah. So just see, hard work isn't rewarded. Just who could? Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's just it. And hard work. I actually gave the definition, in my opinion, my professional definition of hard work is simply verifiable work. That's my opinion of hard work. That's all it is. Hard work is synonymous. It's close to the definition of hard money. It's just verifiable, right? If I hire you to dig a ditch around my house, dig a moat around my house because I need to have a moat and stuff, well, I can verify that you did that. So it doesn't make any difference really to me how long it took you to do it. I can verify that you actually accomplished the goal. So therefore, I'm paying you, right? I'm paying you for a result. It's a little harder to pay somebody for hard work if they are like the HR, the assistant to the general manager of the HR department of some insurance underwriting company in the Midwest. Yeah, I mean it's difficult to explain that. So let's see here. Yeah, positive. Be positive for me. I know the positive posts. Like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I like it's almost to the point of like vio con Dios, guys, because my account's probably going to get nuked if I have to be up and happy all the time about everything. Like, man, imagine me trying to like spin all of like I could probably do it, but dude, it'd be no different than the nonsense you see on TV, and that's whatever. Who cares? Wasn't it Ford who said if people? Yes, it was actually Ford who said that. That if and the quote goes like this: it says, "Wasn't it Ford who said if people knew how the financial system and banking system worked, there would be a revolt. There'd be like a revolution by like 6 a.m. tomorrow morning." Yeah, if people really knew how badly they were being screwed, oh, dude. Yeah, I mean, if they truly understood it, like down in your soul, like, you really understood how badly you're being screwed, oh yeah, they'd be pissed. Yeah, revolution on the street next day, exactly. People would be very upset. Imagine a run on a bank times like 10,000, right? I mean, it would be nuts. It would be just mass pandemonium. It would be so overdue. Of course, now we have everybody running in every different direction and stuff, so it's like you almost have to get people on the same page. That's been my whole goal here, is just to unite the clans, so to speak, because I'm not going to clan with any of you, but I'll unite the clans all I want. I don't have any problem with that, and try and get you guys to understand that you actually are fighting on the same side. You just don't know it. That's one of the worst, this is where negative rights comes from, right? Because you're never going to agree. The leftists are never going to agree with the rightists, right? They're never going to agree. But what you can agree on are a couple of things that you don't want, that universally you don't want. You don't want to have somebody restricting your speech, right? Both sides can pretty much agree with that, right? If they understand the implications, they can say, yeah, it's probably not a good idea. They can both agree that we should be armed, right? I know that for years that was pushed by basically the DNC, who pushed that like, oh no, we need to get rid of ban all, like, no. Ban the Second Amendment and so on. No. Because even for my Marxist people, right? How does it go? Not without recourse. I can't remember what the quote was and stuff. I don't know. I'm not really a Marxist follower, but I mean, but even he said that, like, yeah, the working class should never be disarmed. Like, yeah, even he understood that. Even it's just like FDR, Mr. Liberal himself, right? You know, couldn't believe that there would be such a thing as public sector unions, right? He said, "Oh my God, if there was a public sector union, it would destroy the country." Yeah, yeah. Well, cut two. I've never been worried about the future. The now right with Silicon Valley. You know, the thing is that I think a lot of that stuff, just so to put your mind kind of at ease with the technology stuff, keep in mind a lot of stuff that you guys see technological, right? The tech stuff, like the robot dogs and all that kind of stuff. Aside from the exploding drones, that's a real thing. We see those being used in combat right now. They still have to have child slaves in other countries mine the lithium, right, to do all that stuff. So, I mean, they still rely on a supply chain. And keep this in mind also, a lot of tech stuff that you see and hear is just crap to get investors to invest in it. This is why you see so many companies, you know, like, like that one guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, right? He pulled a Theranos, apparently. All right, remember Theranos? That's that Elizabeth Holmes who is like going to go to jail, I guess, over that, along with all the rest of the 30 under 30 people, like the who's who of who's about to go to jail 10 years from now, kind of thing. Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried. Like most of this stuff is just a scam to get investors to give them money, because the investors didn't know what questions to ask. If they knew what questions to ask, they would never invest in that. Sort of like the electric semi guy, and I use that guy all the time. Let's move the puzzle piece. Yes, TikTok. There we go. Okay, come on, TikTok. There we go. All right, there we go. I'm back. It sends this little message for those you don't know. Anyway, so, but yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried, all these electric semi guy, like, oh, look at how awesome this is, and of course, it was fake. It was totally fake. They just turned the camera sideways at like a slight angle to make it look like the semi was driving itself down the freeway, and it wasn't. I mean, it was a lie, and there's a lot of that goes on. There's a lot of crap that gets spun out of Silicon Valley and in the tech sector that is complete bogus, right? Now, some of it actually does exist, like what's his name, Luigi, you know, the guy who whacked that CEO. I think that the biggest problem with that, personally, if you just wanted a personal opinion, I'm not hanging my hat. I have nothing to back this up, but I think what actually happened is that why they happened to find him, and they're, oh, he has the weapon, and he has, like, he just happened to have all of that stuff right there. I think all that was planted on him. I think what happened was he probably disposed of all of that. Probably did. And they probably found a way, or they have a way to access everybody's cameras on everybody's phones, and they just retraced everything, and they did it all illegally. They violated probably every shred of the Constitution to find that guy. Well, yeah, because they're going to do that for that, because you took you whacked a guy without permission, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's what I think kind of happened, and I think they're going to try and have to figure out how they're going to cover that up and say, oh, we just happened to find this guy at McDonald's, and he happened to have all this stuff. No, we didn't. Stuff was probably already disposed of. They just went and found it and put it back on and stuff, which is hugely illegal to do that. But what do they care, right? There's no more laws anymore. Hasn't been for a long time. But yeah, I think that I wouldn't worry about it too much, because I think a lot of it is fake. There's a lot of stuff that there is some stuff that's bad, but there's also a lot of stuff that doesn't really exist and is unworkable, right? And you could in other words, you could do it to show like a potential investor to get to part them from their money, but in the practical sense, it just doesn't work. Digital currency, far more oversight. Oh, you guys are talking to somebody else. Aspiring mini oligarchs, small businesses exploit too. How does a small business? I'm sorry, but I mean, like, dude, you're going to have to come at me with something a lot better than that. I don't know how you're talking about small businesses exploit, because I don't have any employees personally. I'm exploiting myself. What the hell? Like, dude, seriously, you're going to have to come. You're going to have to get a lot better at that. You know, the thing is that you're just going to have, you're just going to have to understand, like, dude, a lot of small businesses were seriously just one guy doing something, right? I mean, look at the way that a lot of influencers operate. A lot of them, it's one guy, right? Who's that chef on TikTok? That guy who makes those chocolate sculptures. The guy is a genius. The guy's incredible, right? And I mean, like according to Chef Reactions, right? That guy does all of his own editing too. So he doesn't have like some big staff of people that do all it. Like, so no, I reject the whole premise of that idea that something like, oh, they expect no. Keep in mind, if you're an employee, let's say, what are you selling? You are selling your time, your services, right? So if you're doing that, if you think about it, you are a small business. You're a small business who's just selling your time and maybe your skills, right? What you're upset about is the way that the market operates, and that's because of the currency. You guys have got to stop this ism thing, all of you. I mean, left and right, you guys got to stop this nonsense, because ism is just different farming techniques, okay? If I raise cattle, okay, I'm not going to use the same kind of techniques that I would use to raise hydroponic broccoli. Does that make any sense at all? I mean, I just nod your head, okay? Or, like, come on. I mean, like, that's common sense. That's called a farming technique, okay? So when you guys say capitalism, communism, socialism, national socialism, fascism, etc., when you throw all these isms around, think of it like this. Those are called human farming techniques. And they work on certain people differently. They work differently in different areas. But the outcome is always the same. It was no different in the Soviet Union. I mean, sort of be all like serious about it with both barrels, but it's the truth. The Soviet Union collapsed. Had the exact same problems. Right? Gray boxes everywhere. Look at the architecture in the U.S. More and more people are starting to point this out, that like everything's a gray box. What's up with that? Yeah, this is the Soviet Union went through the exact same thing. No architecture, no taste. Everything is just bland. Everything sucks. I just saw a video yesterday, like two back to back, where people were talking about that. Like, why does everything suck? Yeah, because there's no individualism that has to come out, right? Individualism is also coupled with culture if you want to actually make it work, because no man can really be an island unless you're a god or something like that. But I'm just pointing that out. Like, that's how you do that, right? So, and if you take individualism too far to the extreme, where you have the corporate oligarchs show up and say, oh my God, what this really cool idea you've got here, let's bring that to the masses. Just like with the food thing I talked about yesterday. It doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It doesn't work because now you're trying to package something that was unique, that was sort of a lightning in the bottle thing. It's why movies suck. Serious. How many different remakes can you guys watch? For real. I mean, like, everything is basically unwatchable now. Because it's the same crap over and over and over and over, right? You've probably every person watching this video right now has probably said something like that this month. Actually, what's January now? So I guess within a month, you have said something like that to somebody else, where you're like, yeah, everything's just becoming kind of crappy and drab, and it's the same stuff over and over and over. Yeah, it's because you're trying to capture lightning in a bottle. So when you have, like, so for example, you have let me use the restaurant analogy, right? You have awesome burger, some burger place that's just really awesome and it's super cool, and it's one-off, right? Trying to package that and then push it out to the masses, you get what? Burger douche. That's what you end up with. A nonsensical caricature of what it once was. It's no longer unique or individualistic, because that's what people actually want. So when you argue back and forth about how we want to have like all this unique individuality stuff, which is why you have a bunch of people tatting themselves up, and I'm not picking on you if you have tats, or like all this desire, it's a human desire to be kind of unique and individual, which is why when people buy their cars, they do everything, they put 40-inch spinners on them. Or I'm in Houston, so now you have wire wheels that stick out like 4 feet from the car on each side. It's crazy. So, and it's a Houston thing. So this is just how to think of this kind of, at least how I think of this stuff. You do whatever you want to do. I'm just pointing out, like, I mean, this is not a one-off. This is not just, oh my God, it's late stage capitalism. No, dude, it's late stage empire collapsing. Happened in the Ottoman Empire, happened in the British Empire, happened in the Roman Empire. Like, dude, it's every empire collapses pretty much the same way. they become decadent caricatures of themselves. Nobody does any work. Look up Hieronymus Bosch. Hieronymus Bosch was a painter, and he painted the Garden of Earthly Delights. I think that's the name of it. I think it's a longer name, but there's 3 paintings with that. Okay, 3. It's we all familiar with the middle one, the big one, where it's the people, in this, this sort of like utopian paradise existence, right? The first one is the creation. Now, whatever that is, I don't care what it is. I mean, my atheist people, it's the explosion of nothing 80 million years ago, I guess. Okay, for my religious followers, it's the moment that God creates everything. Whatever, I don't care. Whatever soothes you. Okay. And then the next painting is this utopian paradise. And people forget about the third painting, which is hell, the depiction of all of that collapsing. Now, what happened there? Because if you notice that the physical size of that middle painting is actually larger than the ones on either side. There's something that you can notice in that painting, and it's right there in front of everybody, but nobody sees it. It's right there in front of you. Look at that center painting. There is every depiction of every kind of crazy thing that you can imagine. Not just philosophy, art, there's hedonism, there's everything, science, etc. There's all of it going on there, right? And it's this paradise, right? This pinnacle of human existence that it's sort of depicting. What's missing? People working. People maintaining that. People maintaining that kind of civilization. Because you can have whatever civilization you're willing to maintain. Just like you can have whatever house you're willing to maintain. Most people right now watching this video right now, if I gave you a 40,000 square foot mega mansion, you would be broke within a year. Maybe some of you make it 2 years. And it's if I gave it to you. Because the maintenance on those things, they're crippling. Why do you think nobody wants them? Why do you think they have to practically beg billionaires to buy them? You own Helmsley's. I used to live in Helmsley's house. I mean, like the thing sat forever. They finally had to lower the price to almost nothing to get it to sell, because they break people. Yeah. So you can have whatever civilization you want. You just have to pay for it. That means work. That means somebody has to maintain all this. And I'll be damned if I got to do all of that by myself. Everybody's has to do that. So the reason you do that is for incentive, and the incentive is that, like, hey, I mean, you're going to keep what you make. And then your excess is what lifts everybody else for the most part. Okay, it's division of labor, right? Division of labor is what you actually want. That's your goal. Like, there's a video on my account on TikTok that's pinned to the top, and it's called The Competency Crisis, and I talk about the division of labor. That is a basic fundamental of human existence. If everybody has to do everything for themselves, the default setting of humanity sucks. Everything's a ton of work. Everything, because you have to do everything yourself. So yeah, I mean, this is just one of these things that, it's one of these things that people have to start thinking about like, how are you going to maintain all of that? You can have whatever civilization you want. Take what you want and pay for it. Pay for it with, your time. And if there's a bunch of people out there, unfortunately, that still labor under this delusion that, well, no, we can force people to work. No, you cannot. You're watching that breakdown right now. If they can't get you to work, they'll just replace you with somebody else. So, your genetics die with you. I mean, this is just, like, I'm not kidding. If you have no long-term thinking ability, right, you will eventually be a slave to someone who does. And there are people out there, your ruling class, okay, these guys think like 200 years from now. They're not thinking about right now. They don't care about what you guys are doing. So, I mean, just, like, factor that into your equations when you're thinking about this stuff. We're evolving past capitalism, get robots. We'll see if the robots work. I mean, this is another one of these problems that I keep pointing out. You already have everything turning into cheap plastic garbage that's falling apart. Why would the robots be any different? Why are the robots going to be made out of, like, tungsten and titanium and be, like, precision made by guys like me who are just fanatics about precision? Yeah, I ain't doing it. Not for free. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of say, I'm not picking on your question, I'm just, or your comment, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just pointing out the reality that, again, they show, like, there was just a video, I just saw this last week. They took 2 axe heads. For anybody who don't know what an axe is what you use to chop wood. And they take the axe heads, they put them like this, Okay, so I don't know if you can see it like this, but it's like this. And they used a press, and they pressed them into each other. And the new axe head, of course, the metallurgy is so garbage, it just, the other old axe head made back in the 60s just split it right in half. Of course it did. The metallurgy is better. Now, what does it take to make to make steel that hard? A ton of work. Scroll through TikTok long enough and you'll see it. You'll see a bunch of guys making like knives, Damascus knives, old school style, using presses, basically pounding stuff. They're just not using hammers, they're using presses for it. That takes a tremendous amount of energy to do that. Not just to run the crucible, but to run those hydraulic presses. That takes an enormous amount of electricity to run all that stuff. This is stuff you're not taught, unfortunately. This is the stuff that, like, if I ran a school, it would be field trip after field trip after field trip. I don't have to teach you anything. I can just take you around and let somebody else do it. Let the guys who work in these factories explain to little kids how all this stuff actually works, because that's actually far more effective. That's 10 times more effective. I remember every field trip I've ever taken. You just, like, people go to, what do kids do? They go to the zoo. That's great for learning zoology, and zoology is important to understand some of this stuff, so that you know what snakes are, to avoid, right? And you know to avoid the lion, or you know to avoid Harambe, right? But there's also the practical reality of, like, how does clean water even get to your house? Wow, kids, let's go find out. Let's go find out from the people who actually make clean water go to your house. The water is 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. It shows up at your house pre-mixed. Oh my God, it's what a savings. It's a bargain. Or you can just drill it, drill a well for yourself. I got to do that coming up here pretty soon myself, actually. Where do you see the country going in the next 10 years? That third painting that Hieronymus Bosch painted, that's where I see it. No, it really is going to depend. I mean, it's a battle of wills at this point. If the American people have the will to push hard enough and say no, and put their foot down and say, no, you need to deport all the illegals, you need to cut off all the H-1Bs, has nothing to do with race, has to do with finances, has to do with making all these companies and all these bankers go bankrupt. Because they should have gone bankrupt years ago. Every one of them should have gone bankrupt in 2009, 2010. Every one of them should have gone bankrupt. And then all those assets should have sold at auction to guys like me for pennies on the 100. And people like you, who should have been able to just buy your house out of foreclosure for $2,300 cash on the courthouse steps. That's what should have happened. Because that's really all that stuff's actually worth, especially given the state of modern construction. So, yeah, I mean, if that happens, well, then the country has a chance. But if it's just going to be keep propping it up, keep propping it up, keep propping it up with just endless amounts of cheap labor, well, who knows, right? They don't have budget. They don't. They just print money whenever they want. It's horrible. Let's see here. I think he was Egyptian. Who? Let's see here. Borat. Oh yeah. I saw the movie a long time. I was not sober, so I couldn't tell you what the movie was even about. Emperor's New Clothes, yes. It's a great analogy. It's probably one of my favorite stories. Narcissism tends to be very high and successful. Yeah, and the thing is, it's not really justified either. Now personally, by the way, I think the word narcissism is getting a little overused in the parlance of our times, to use a big Lebowskiism. But yeah, I mean, I think it's getting a little overused, but yeah, there's definitely a detachment from the real reality of all the people that prop all of this up. In other words, the people that do all of the work, your working class, it's in the name. It's the people who show up and do all those jobs that nobody else wants to do or can't do, right? And yeah, I mean, they're losing touch with that rapidly. They're becoming so entitled. They're becoming like boomer-esque type entitlement, which is really saying something. Just like all the shareholders out there that think they're entitled to a profit. No 401k says anywhere in there, it says that you're entitled to a profit. I will debate absolutely anybody on that topic. And I'll do it with no notes, no nothing. I can just stand there and just say, dude, show me in any contract for a 401k, an IRA, a Roth IRA, like show me anywhere, in any brokerage account anywhere where it says that I'm entitled to a return on this money. No, what it says actually is the exact opposite. You agree to lose all this money. In fact, it usually says in bold, italicized, underlined, all caps, that you agree to lose all this money. So, reckless decisions. Oh yeah, it's that's just it. Quantitative easing, plan for fiat. Yeah, that's quantitative, exactly. We'll see what happens if they do it. The problem is it'll probably be pocketed in inflation. And for those of you who don't know, it's my term. Pocketed inflation just means that you just keep bailing out the big companies and let everybody else just go broke. That's what I think is coming. Going to be crazy in 2025? Yeah, probably. Largely because, if for no other reason, because the internet has become so prolific, and not just the internet, but the cameras have become so prolific of everything. Everybody is seeing everything all the time in real time, constantly. There's no news cycle. It just like your phone, you open it up and it's like it's instant news, and you know everything that's going on in about 20 minutes, and it's overwhelming. Whereas back in the day, right? I mean, back in days, Gen Xers, right? I mean, let me talk to my younger or my Xers out there, right? That, like, you know, the boring 6 o'clock news came on and we went outside to play because, you know, like there wasn't anything on TV now, because now the adults are going to watch the news and it's going to talk about the top story of something like that. And that's it. And then, so for 35, 40 minutes, like that's what all they talked about was 1 or 2 top stories. And that's what you just assumed was going on in the world, right? Now we don't have that. Now we have like instantaneous everything all the time, and it's warping the way that people perceive the world around them. So we think, oh my God, everything's falling apart. No, it's always falling apart. It's just, you just didn't know about it. I got so many friends under 44 losing all their hope. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's a serious problem. I'm not without empathy on this one. I mean, I'm closer to millennial than I am Gen X. I mean, Gen Xer technically, but I'm not part of the older Xers. And yeah, a lot of them are. A lot of them are, you know, kind of looking at this, they're staring into the abyss of the future going, oh my God, how is this going to work? The goal that we should be having is not this sort of class consciousness awakening kind of thing, because it sounds all guru-ish and all new agey to me. It's just a matter of people having a financial awakening and realizing that this is an unworkable Ponzi scheme, and it's called the US dollar. Has nothing to do with any of the farming techniques. The farming techniques are on, that's a separate thing entirely, with all the isms, which are farming, which I would strongly recommend getting away from all the isms categorically, and just focus on, like, hey, how about just small business ownership and private property, personal property. Let's start defining those terms a little bit tighter, so you don't have this ridiculous nonsense where Bill Gates wants to buy all the farmland and destroy the crops. Let's start having that conversation, and then have commerce among each other, and get the government the hell out of it, because government is your collective greed and incompetence. I have said that dozens of times. I don't care what government it is. It's all governments, whether it's the Soviet government, the Maoist government, the little mustache guy government, it doesn't matter. They are your collective greed and incompetence, and anytime people are allowed to actually be on the side of that, and they're able to be on the so-called the majority side, they will always be the worst people in the world, every single time. This is why like 30 minutes ago, I just said, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that the police and military won't enforce. They'll enforce prima nocta, of course, because they are your collective greed and incompetence. Sorry, it's the truth. That's just how it is. So yeah, we need to move past that. The gift of depression. It's really not, actually. When you get to the point of just saying, no, you know what? I don't mind playing the game, because that's how I see this. I see this as kind of a game. Elon and I are not too different on this one. Different motivations, but the deal is I kind of see this like a game too. And when you understand the game itself, then you change your motivations a little bit. And part of the fun is actually building something for yourself. That is part of the fun. It's why models, sold for a long time. It's why people like doing this kind of stuff, right? Even if you're in a video game, let's say you're playing a video game and you're going around the game board all the time, for days on end in some cases, especially with the larger MMOs like World of Warcraft and what have you, spending days to try and hunt. I remember getting a flying dragon. It took me 40 tries to open that stupid egg to get the dragon. And that's part of the game, right? So, but there's a difference between having a game and having an honest game, and honest game comes from the currency. I love the Stoics. It's messed up too. Some words I get instantly, others, I just don't pick it up. Let's see. Always here. Yes, thank you, Grubby Goat. Sincerely hope you're. I sincerely believe you are the most authentic person I've discovered on TikTok, and I acquire. Well, I try. I'm just telling you. Again, remember, and just keep this in mind, for entertainment purposes only. Let me give you the slight disclaimer on this. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. This is years of experience, and it is, in many cases, my personal and professional opinion combined. Okay. When I say professional opinion, I'm talking about as far as like, in the business world, because I've owned a lot of businesses, more than I remember actually, more than I care to remember actually. And so I have to do the disclaimer of like, dude, just keep in mind, like for, for entertainment purposes, but yeah, I'm glad that you're learning something, I hope. As far as authenticity, I don't know how to be anything else other than me. I'm like, this is like as base level as it gets. I don't know that I would know how to do. I don't know that I could play a character. I think I could try it, I suppose, but I don't know that I could really play a character. Not when I'm just talking to somebody about like just reality, just life, right? No need to play a character. This is the same stuff I would tell you if we were standing here in my garage. I mean, of course, it wouldn't be a one-way conversation. I don't talk as much in real life, believe it or not. Like if you ever, like it's weird. A couple of people have actually met me in real life, and they're like, "This is strange." Like, yeah, because I don't talk very much in real life. I'm listening more than I am talking. It's just not the way it is. I'll talk about stuff if somebody wants to talk about it, and I'll do occasionally, if I'm surrounded by a big group, I'll do the so-called nervous talking kind of thing, but it's usually because I don't do well in huge groups. I never have. That isn't a internet thing. That is because I grew up by myself for many years on my own devices. Let's see here. We can't stop what's happening right now, but we can start doing more business among you. Yeah, I strongly encourage people to do more business among themselves. Even if you're just doing like light trade, if you're just labor trade or something like that. That was done for a long time. Your neighbor would help you with something and you would help them with something. Like that's just, the Amish have the right of it when it comes to that. Now I may not own with the Amish on the whole no electricity, no cars thing because I'm a car guy, but the building stuff that lasts and using, like glue and pegs and so forth to put wood together and everything like that stuff, I'm all about that. I'm all about stuff that lasts a long time. And yeah, the Amish have the right of that. And if more people started thinking like that, you wouldn't have this ridiculous plastic nonsense world that we have right now, where everything is just a gray box, right? It would be, there'd be more depth and uniqueness to it. There was a video some girl that was doing, she was showing this Victorian house and everything and how pretty it was. And it's like, yeah, people are perfectly capable of building stuff like that. It's just nobody wants to do it. They don't want to pay for it. And I don't mean pay for it in terms of money, I'm just pay for it in terms of energy, right? Money's an energy transfer. So the more accurate the unit of measurement that you have, the more accurate the energy transfer, which means you can have more accurate price discovery. That is absolutely critical. Price discovery is very, very, very important. Future generations, let's see, for future generations, anyways, sacrificial for us. Yeah, kinda. I mean, let's see here. What means violence that can be done peacefully? Hey, look, I mean, if it can be done peacefully, I'm all about that. Violence is counterproductive. I mean, it really is. I mean, I talk about it periodically, but it is counterproductive. It is bad for business. This is no joke. It is bad for business. You ideally don't want to have something like that. But if you make peaceful revolutions impossible, you make violent revolutions inevitable. John F. Kennedy. We all know how that worked out for him. Inflation is theft. It's the definition of theft. He's behind on the comments because he stopped the scroll. Yeah, probably. Well, yes. So the thing is that for those of you who don't know, the TikTok just scrolls constantly, and there's no way I can keep up with that fast. There's just no way. And I don't have like if there were like 5,000 people watching me or something like this, is never going to happen. But if I had like 5,000 people watching me or something, I'd actually have to have moderators or something. It might make it a little easier for me. But there's just absolutely no way I can keep up with that by myself. Do you think there's a peaceful political solution? Yeah, if you can find somebody if you could find normal people to actually that are willing to take positions of, I don't want to say power, I don't like to use that word, but take political positions, then maybe you could. But look at what's happening to Thomas Massey today, right? I mean, normal people don't want to be in charge of stuff because that's not how normal people behave. If they want to be in charge of something, it's usually they're in charge of their own life, their own business, things like that. They're not really looking to, they don't want to run your life. Okay, that's like I can scarcely think of a hell worse than like running somebody's life. I understand the job of, like, for example, presidency, because that's in the news. I understand the job and I understand doing the job, but I can't think of a more hellacious job to do, because like you have everybody, going to you and wanting you to solve all their problems that they are perfectly capable of solving for themselves. God gave you a brain for a reason, right? So that you don't waste his time. That's no other way of putting that. Yeah. I mean, so if more people did that, then then you just use common sense. There's no reason to go running to somebody else. I mean, it's like, dude, no. I mean, like, use common sense. Use the laws of physics and the laws of conscience. Not to get all Jiminy Cricket about that, but let your conscience be your guide. Life isn't hard. People make life complicated because they followed somebody down the wrong road, and then they got down there and went, oh my God, what do? I'm totally lost. And then they look around for a solution, and of course, who shows up with the solution, ready-made, ready to go? The con man, who has all the answers. Yeah, I mean. And you have to look past those guys and go, okay, well, if you have all the answers, like, all right, hold on, let's put some of these answers to the test. Let's try a microcosm on this and stuff. Let's try it out and see what happens. And yeah, usually it's a scam. It's just they were after your money or your time or both. So do I think there's peaceful solution? Yeah, but you got to find people, and then more importantly, even if you find the people that are willing to do the jobs, then you have to get past the system itself, right? I mean, why do you think that TikTok's going away? I mean, hopefully it's not. But if somebody were to use like socialist media platforms and not have to get a bunch of money from you, or like a small amount of money, not the hundreds of millions of dollars people are spending in these ridiculous campaigns. If somebody did that, they would be deplatformed instantly. They'd find something you did that violated TOS because they can interpret it however they want. And then they just kick you off the internet, they unperson you, and then your campaign goes away. So you can't even run as an independent. I'm not kidding. Like, this is how it works. I mean, we're seeing that right now with former Birdsite. Anybody who goes against the narrative. If you go against the narrative, we'll change the entire algorithm to make sure that no one sees any of your stuff. You can say all the stuff you want, but nobody will find you. Sort of like it's like a digital prison, if you want to think of it in those terms. So, Goldman Sachs needs another $5 billion. Yeah, probably. Nothing would surprise. I don't even think they do that anymore. I think personally, what I think happens with this now, I literally think they just do whatever they want. They don't tell anybody. There's no oversight anyway, and no one's going to audit the Fed. It'll never happen. They just do whatever they want. So, let's see. Constant news, yeah. Internet enlightened the people. Only certain people had. Yeah, so only certain people had said knowledge. We all know. Yeah, I mean, that's just it. I mean, the internet, I don't know, probably has done about just as much harm as it has good. So, Walter's World of Pain. I don't know what that is. Sorry. It hurts to learn how bad we're being. Scarred. I'm guessing scammed is what that, maybe that's what that word would. Yeah, it is really horrible. No rulers. Yeah, you don't need to have rulers. You can have leaders, but you know what a leader is? A leader is somebody who's worth following. How many people are out there are actually worth following? I'm not saying perfect. Like, you're never going to find perfect leaders because people are human beings. That's just ridiculous to suggest otherwise. But in order to be a leader, you have to be somebody that's worth following, right? So there you go. How many of these people are worth following? Right? I mean, most of us would not trust any of these people that are the so-called political leaders in this country to water our plants if we were gone out of the house, because they probably would loot our house and sell, you know, they'd start squatting there because they're a bunch of criminals, right? I mean, right? So yeah, I mean, like, this is just reality. So if you're finding people that are actually leaders, it's because they're actually doing what they're talking about, not just virtue signaling. And most of what we have now is just a bunch of virtue signaling douchebags that they talk a really good game, but then when it comes down to it, nothing changes. The Second Amendment, for example, and I hammer on this all the time, which is like, dude, I mean, okay, now you have all the Republicans, right? You've got, it's House, Senate, presidency, you've got all Republicans. All right, Republicans for years have been saying that it's not the gun laws, so we need to get, okay, so let's get rid of all these gun laws. They'll never do it. They're all talk. They're absolutely all talk. They'll never do it. They should, but they'll never do it. Where do you put money if not in a 401k? Personally, I can only tell you what I do. And it is anything that can't be printed out of nothing. I'll let you extrapolate from that whatever you want. But anything that can't be printed or conjured from nothing. 401ks, unfortunately, get bailed out all the time. And it's just more and more debt on top of debt. And it also feeds that beast. You know, it just feeds that giant Ponzi scheme of the stock market, which is all it is anymore. Love how he said, lizard brain thinking. When did I say that? People have to remind me of stuff that I talk about because I usually forget it. I don't have any script or anything, so when I turn the camera on, I just let her rip. I don't have any pre-planned anything to talk about. So let's see here. People are their own worst enemies here. Debt accepted as destiny. Yeah, debt is a big problem. I mean, if you want to end usury, which I encourage people to do, stop borrowing. It's the fastest way to end usury. Stop borrowing. So, I mean, seriously, that is the quickest way to end it, is stop borrowing. Start paying the price on the front end, not on the back end. And if you're paid in hard currency, it ends all the scams. Period. And now I would say that to absolutely anybody on this planet, whether you spoke English or not. Hopefully, my hope, believe it or not, just on like a personal level, my hope is that there's people out there who are multilingual or bilingual who speak like another language perfectly, like really well. So technical, or I speak a lot of technical English. So if you speak technical, whatever, you know, fill in the blank language, I would like to think that some people would very carefully translate some of the stuff that I talk about and then translate it to other people, so that way they can understand this stuff too, because I don't speak other languages. Not well anyway. So not well enough to present the thoughts that I do with the speed at which I do it. So it'd be kind of cool if there actually was somebody out there doing that and trying to explain this to people in like Spanish or in Japanese or in Mandarin or something like that, or in, you know, whatever the language they're speaking in the Congo, like French, I think. So yeah, I mean, I think that'd be awesome. I believe an introvert. Yeah, that's just how I grew up. I don't go into my background very often. I've had people ask me, but I generally don't go into it because it's really, nobody would believe it anyway. So it's like, I mean, like, it's kind of why bother trying to tell the story if you know no one's going to believe it. But yeah, I mean, I spent most of my time alone as a little kid, so pretty neglected, and I had nothing in common with the people around me, and I didn't trust any of the adults because the adults were all a bunch of hypocrites. So how many hypocrites do you trust? I don't want to be anything else. Yeah, I don't want to be anything else either. It's the thing. People chasing social media clout and trying to, influencers and trying to do that. Like, I see girls do this a lot. You should be you, not try to be somebody else. Like, that just seems like kind of a waste of your time to try and be somebody else. Be you. And it's weird how people are drawn to that. It's strange. If someone's actually genuine and just being themselves, and they're not putting on any airs, like, it's weird how, and it's because I think people are like looking for realness, because there's so many people that are fake. Everything, like I said, it's just, I mean, everything is a facade. Look at the way the architecture is in the world. All the strip malls are just a gray box. Now, they might have a facade on the front of it that looks like a little castle or something like that, but it's a gray box. There's no soul, there's no character. Just like with the food analogy I gave. Most of the food all tastes the same no matter what restaurant you go to anymore. Yeah, because it's all coming from the same factories, you know, produced by the same illegals. Let's see here. Good job, you've gone 90 minutes. Oh, that's TikTok. Has it been 90 minutes? Wow. Politicians are supposed to work for us. They absolutely are. They don't, but they are. Let's see. OMG, you're talking about my life and it's hell. I don't know what part of it, but you know, you just try to change it from a hell to a challenge. I'm not getting motivational on you. It's kind of how I have to think about it too. I didn't hear anything about Thomas Massey recently. What happened? Go to. You have to look it up there. It's just like there's just too much to go into that here. Not with the amount of time I have left anyway. Thank you for memory. I'm not sure what I did, but let's see here. What do you think about those who say that orange internet money transaction times would be too slow if everyone used it? So here's, if you want my professional opinion, which is what I'll give you on this. I think people in general have gotten used to doing so many transactions that are completely unnecessary per day. That's my real opinion of that. Think of how many mindless transactions people do on a daily basis, right? For most people, they'll just do 10 transactions in a day and not even think twice about it. They don't even blink about it. I think that people might take the time to really think through before they transact. Now, of course, that's bad for businesses, right? Because businesses want you to constantly be moving and shaking, right? They want you to constantly be turning dollars because that's how their businesses are built. But it's because of debt they're having to service and rent seekers they have to pay. If businesses don't have rent seekers to pay and they don't have any debt to service, well, then a slow day is just a slow day, all right? That's how I look at that. So, I just think that it may not be a bad idea necessarily to have things maybe slow down a tiny bit. I don't think that's out of the question. I don't think that it would be too slow. I just think that people might actually really think through. Plus, there will be the third parties that pop up. There will. I mean, that's inevitable. The question is, will they be auditable? So auditable, not audible, auditable. I hope that translated. Anyway. Is TikTok open source? I don't think it is. I think that they are proprietary. What do I eat and drink for energy? Well, today was steak and eggs. So, generally protein. BlackRock owns everything. Yeah, it's unfortunate. And they do that with printed money out of nothing. You change the game on them, then all of that starts going away. That's why they are doing everything they can to get a hold of all the orange internet money they can, because when you run out, you can run on for a long time, but if you're not going to be actually a productive member of society, no matter how much money you have, you will eventually run out, especially if it's a hard currency. That's just math. That is just straight math. There's no way out of that. That's just straight math, and that applies to everybody pretty evenly. How can I get money? Let's see, how can I get money from a 401k? You would just call your broker and just tell them, I don't know your situation, but if you're just asking how, in theory, how to do it, you would just call whatever broker and say, hey, it's my money and I need it now. I don't know, that's how you would say it, right? And then you just put it into whatever it is that you want to put it into and stuff. Please do your own research on a lot of this stuff. And really take the time to think it through. And wise is the man of many counselors. Don't just take everything I'm saying as gospel. Talk to other people. Look up. There's other people out there that do know stuff, and there are probably going to be guys that are going to know more than I do on specific topics. So make sure to always check with them. Again, many counselors isn't a bad thing. Even I do that. So. Don't even have to do just boycott. Yeah, I mean, if boycotts worked, man, they don't anymore because they just print money. That's the problem. We live in a post-profit world. Everybody keeps. Let me kind of educate you guys on some of this really quickly, just so you know on the back end. All these companies, they don't have to make big profits because they can always just use a stock market gimmick and bailouts. So companies aren't like small businesses. Small businesses have to be profitable. They have to turn a profit in order to stay open. Mega companies do not. They just have to play the game. And if they get in trouble, then it like, oh my gosh, they're in trouble somehow. And then just a magic investor shows up, some opaque investor overseas decides to buy them out. Like, yeah, that's just how this game is played. So they don't have to make these profits quite as much as people think. So boycotts, that's why a lot of boycotts don't actually work. They work in the government sense. So like, remember, I don't know, Alex Jones, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, he was going to orchestrate like a Thanksgiving travel day, boycott where we're going to make everybody at the TSA pat everybody down. And so all they did was they can't have what's called a moral victory, right, where they overwhelmed TSA and actually accomplished the mission. So what TSA did was they just shut everything down. And they just said, oh, well, we're just shutting it down for this week because for cleaning or whatever flimsy, lame excuse they made. And it's so that way there wasn't a moral victory. Moral victories are extremely powerful, right? ISIS uses that, right? That's why they post the videos whenever they have some kind of victory, because moral victories are extremely powerful. They embolden other people. Or to use a Simpsons word, they embiggen other people. No, they embolden other people to say, yeah, hey, look, these are not gods. They bleed like everybody else. I'm not making any moral judgments, right or wrong. I'm just saying that's how it is. Okay, so like, don't read. I'm not picking a clan on this one. I'm just pointing out the reality. That is exactly how it is. So I mean, just like no difference in a cul-de-sac. If you live in a cul-de-sac and your neighbors' houses are being attacked and everything, and then the pigs show up and they want to they go down the cul-de-sac, which is one way in, one way out, and then all of a sudden they're turned into cat food. Like, yeah. And it's on video. Now, of course, the internet will take that down really quickly because they're all owned by the same people, because BlackRock does own almost everything. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, all of them. They'll take it all down and so nobody will see it. That's why they need to have that control. It's not like the 90s where you could actually have like the real internet. Now you have, then you have the branding, the dark web. Oh my God, it's the dark web. Like, yeah, it sounds a little sinister. No, it's just the internet. It's just the internet that the Gen Xers grew up with, like the real internet, where you could just, I'm not going to say the name of the websites. I won't do that. Anyway, where you could see some of the craziest stuff this world had to offer, and it would warp you for life. Let's see. People have ideas of what people should be trying to stuff it. Yeah, stuff you in it. I think I understood that kind of. I don't know that I understood what you meant. Sorry. You probably already talked about it, but what do you think of the Las Vegas bombing? I did. I touched on it earlier, and I don't have really enough information to have really a solid opinion on that. It appears that it was just this one guy, and maybe it was coincidental. I don't know. I mean, it may not have been. There may have been something that was coordinated. I'm kind of not thinking so, because it looks like it was something that was just, a one-off that. We'll see. I mean, maybe. Let's see here. Come on. This little scrolling thing. Scroll. Sorry, guys, for the delay. It's good. A light bulb flashed. I'm not sure. The DNA from the body didn't match his kid. Yeah, but something like 10% of men, that's the case, right? That's why they don't do paternity testing as an automatic thing when kids are born. They should. I mean, I kind of support that idea, just to make sure. Once again, it keeps honest people honest, right, ladies? Passports. Yeah, I know, and that is a weird thing to me. That is odd. That for whatever reason, passports and military IDs are just completely impervious to explosions, and buildings follow their own footprint and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, some of that stuff does strain credulity with me as well. But unless there was something a little more, unless there was evidence that wasn't quite as flaccid, it's hard to really comment and say that, like, yeah, I think that it's part of some big scam or conspiracy. It's entirely possible it is, but do we really? In other words, here's how I would look at this. There's already a bunch of known stuff that is a big problem right now. Do we really need to throw another log onto that fire? A small log at that? Do we really need to do that? We already have kind of a full plate that we could be looking at that actually is a big problem. And that's one of the challenges that ends up happening with, of course, the news cycle, is that, like, a big piece of bombshell craziness happens and it gets overshadowed by because people just move on, right? They just move right past it. And yeah, it kind of sucks, because especially when there's stuff that is really truly important that actually does, that people could actually have an effect on. Notice, for example, not to beat a dead horse with this, but notice, for example, enough people, right, pushed back hard enough on America's favorite billionaire to the point where he had a mental breakdown. That's big news. That's actually huge, especially because it was the American people pushing back, saying, dude, hold on a second here. We have some pretty big problems that we need to focus on, and piling more people in here from any country, doesn't matter. Piling more people in here is not going to help. And yeah, so to the point where the guy had, like, basically an episode, okay, it's a pretty big deal. So that's my opinion anyway. Anyway, so if there's any other questions, how long have I been going for? I don't know it doesn't even show what time. Of course it doesn't show what time it is. Why would it do that? Because then I'd actually say, oh my gosh, I have to go. But, but if there's any other questions, young men that can do industrial electric work, older electricians are dying off. They absolutely are. Yeah, so I've been almost 2 hours, actually. Yeah, it is a problem. And especially as someone who works with electricity, electricity has gotten so obscure to people. I had a customer, I don't usually go into this, but I actually had, just if you want a story of how bad it's gotten, I had a customer who was about my age that was asking me about their generator, and they said, well, couldn't they make a generator that, instead of using like a natural gas or a propane powered engine that's noisy because it's really disruptive to the house, couldn't they make it electric so that way it's quieter and it produces, electricity for my house? And I was gauging whether or not she was joking, because I wasn't quite certain if that was like a math joke or a physics joke. She wasn't. She was actually asking, and that's not how the laws of physics work on this planet. You can't have an electric motor if there's no power to your house producing power for your, that's not how that works. And so, yeah, that's kind of where we are now, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, this is where the whole math and physics thing comes from, and this is why my strong encouragement is for anybody that has little kids, for the handful of people, for the 10 people that have kids in the U.S. right now, maybe take them out of these ridiculous schools and just take them on field trips and let other people explain how all this stuff works, because maybe they'll learn something from it, especially if you can find one of these old guys. I love the old guys, man. When I find a gem, like the tractor place that I go to, this like 80-year-old guy that just knows everything about tractors, at all cost, I hope that guy survives another 25 years, because it's just a wealth of knowledge, and it's hard to find those guys because you're right, they're dying off, and even Gen Xers can't keep up with that. The guys who've been doing other stuff in our trades, so much of it is changing because the demand is changing, because so much of it is going overseas, so there's not any demand domestically, so a lot of people aren't learning all these skills, and it's actually creating a very warped economy, and not just a warped economy, but it's creating a warped perspective on the way that the country functions, that you still need to have people maintain all this stuff. And there's actually a South Park episode about that. It was like where Randy, Stan's dad, is like, let me show you how to deal with the handyman and everything, and the handyman like just basically schools him on the way out, and he says, dude, people don't know how to do anything anymore. I'm making more money than I've ever made. Like, yep, that is a thing. That I know guys that are doing that, they're busier than they've ever been because nobody knows how to do anything. Yeah, it's a real thing. So really messed up, and people need to work on that. Let's see here. I knew that was coming. No kidding. It's the squinting eyes. Yeah. I think my wife said something about my eyes one time, about the squinting. Plus, it's also bright. I had like this little light that's bright because I'm in my garage, so like, and it's still 1,000,000 degrees. It's like February, and it's still 1,000,000 degrees out here. Do you think the market will collapse, recover at some point? In terms of dollars, no, not unless the labor demand, not unless the cheap labor is cut off. Then the markets will collapse. They'll correct. They won't collapse. They'll correct. They'll go to what they should be. The Dow should be at something like 600, not 6,000, 600. It's like, all that stuff's overbought. And it's good. It's got too many printed dollars that are fake in it. So like all those markets have to correct. In order to get those markets to correct, you got to cut off all their cheap labor. It's just reality. Yeah, that's the lifeline, right? That's part of asymmetric warfare. Is you cut off their supply. The supply is cheap labor. But they're geniuses. No, they're not. No, they're not. If there was a land of cheap geniuses, then why would these companies not have put all their businesses in the lands of cheap geniuses? That's just complete brazen dishonesty. Let's see how long fraternity testing. I don't know. From if it were me, just being the hard scientist that I am, it would be like triple blind going to different labs. And actually, if it were me and I owned a birthing center or a hospital, I would have my own staff and lab on site where there was actual direct oversight, because most of the labs in this country are owned by, guess who? Who do you think owns? This will be a fun one. Everybody out there watching this, here's some homework. Type in to the screen who you think owns all those labs. We all know who owns all of those labs. It doesn't make any difference what lab it is. So how can you trust any of the data that comes out of them? They give you whatever data that suits their purposes. So no, I would want to have my own on staff people that handle all that, right? Because that's just reality. So, what is this? Sorry, there's a flashy thing that TikTok sent me. It's almost like a ticker. It's weird. On something with the trades. Yeah, the trades aren't exactly bad. Be careful. Because a lot of people are going to start flooding into trades. About 3 years ago, I did a video. Go back on YT and you'll find my old series. There's like 19 sessions that I did. They're the very original videos I ever did. Back when I would spend all the time trying to comb my hair to make it flat. I just gave up, and now I just do, because my hair does this naturally. So, I explained this, that eventually these markets kind of saturate, and especially they saturate when you have a declining population, right? So you have less demand overall because you have just fewer people. Okay, so so be careful on some of that stuff. And the reason I say be careful is not because I'm not saying go learn skill, dude. If you want to go learn to stick weld, I say do it. If you want to learn to do TIG weld and everything, dude, do all that stuff. But just keep in mind, maybe be cautious on how much money you spend on your materials and your tooling for the trades. Be careful not to, and definitely try to avoid debt, because you never know when you could run out of road very quickly. The market can run out of road very quickly. Yeah, BlackRock, exactly. Winner, chicken dinner. Most of these labs are not owned independently. If I were a doctor, it'd be the same thing. If I were actually a physician, I would want to have on-site lab. my own lab, and I would probably do a lot of my own chems. And the reason being is because, again, I like that ability to actually know for real what's going on and not trust a bunch of companies that may or may not be trustworthy. And especially nowadays with what I'm seeing, a lot of companies are not trustworthy. They're just not. So this is, and what we used to call this was vertical integration. That's what, so for my capitalist people, that's called vertical integration. For my communist people, that's called owning the means of production. Right? It's the same thing. The outcome is the exact same, but but you guys call them different things because you guys want to argue about stuff. But yeah, if it were me, I would put it on site. So just because then I know, and I can also go back and recheck my work. So if there was something like that, it came up for example purposes, since paternity brought this up, if I'm doing paternity testing, for example, and I saw that like the dad isn't the dad, well, then I might want to double check my results and maybe even triple check my results before you go and destroy, you know what I mean? Like, there's a human element there. Before you go and completely destroy a family, you want to really make double, triple sure that data is correct. That in fact, like, yeah, there's like a 0% chance that you're the actual dad, dude. Did you know this? Like, well, no, I didn't. Okay, well, then I'm about to help you dodge a pretty big bullet here. So, they aren't given the original sample, and they may not be. That's my point. I mean, who knows? They may not be being given the original samples. There's a lot of infrastructure exactly. They're right. There is a lot of infrastructure, and it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility if small businesses weren't so laden with debt. Yeah, that's. I mean, that really is the problem. You need to watch the original series. Yeah, it's I try to explain it, and I spent like 19 sessions trying to explain the physics behind all of this, and I'm terrible at explaining things. I even had the whiteboard and everything out, and I'm terrible at explaining this stuff. I can explain the idea off the cuff, but for me to try and go through and break it all down and stuff, I'm just not very good at like outlining that kind of stuff. So I did the best I could. Saw a woman who admitted to accepting money to deny verifiable claims. I'm guessing you're talking about child support. Yeah, I know, it's horrible. That's horrible what's been done. And all it's done is successfully made men not want to date women anymore. Every day we see the videos like that, where it's like, where you see the videos like, where are all the good men? How come a man wouldn't help me with my groceries? I was coming out of the grocery store and a bunch of stuff spilled and men just walk right past me. Like, dude, yeah, it's because of that. I mean, you know, one of these days I'll actually have to talk about that and see how many people actually tune in for that, because that seems to be a really hot topic for a lot of people. And I'm not a fame chaser, so I don't care about that kind of stuff. But there is something that needs to be maybe just talked about with that, because it is a problem, and it isn't a man problem, it isn't a woman problem. It's unfortunately, it's too much government, you know, and it's too much government trying to solve a bunch of problems that they have no business solving, because they are your collective greed and incompetence. It always comes back to that. Great job, learned so much. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. I hope I was a help. Medical insurance claims, they don't pay claims anymore. My God, insurance companies do everything they can not to pay claims. We all know that they're doing everything they can to get out of paying claims for everybody. For those of you want to know the math behind it, right? It's really simple. It's a very simple equation for insurance companies. Here's how it works. Right? Like, you can take, this is some information you can take tomorrow, and the next time you have some argument with somebody about insurance, and it doesn't make any difference what their politics are. Like, it doesn't. You can shred anybody on both sides. A way an insurance company makes money, by definition, it has to take in more premiums than it pays out in claims. Period. Otherwise, it is not profitable. That is the business model. It has to bring in more premiums than it pays out. What does that tell you? It means that they have to deny claims. They have no choice but to deny as many claims as they can get away with to maintain profitability, or they have to keep raising your premiums. It's a zero-sum game in that regard, and they have to still take out 20% in profits, because they're insurance companies, and of course they all have to make zillions of dollars on everything. I know they say 3%, it's 20%, because they've got all their costs and everything, and then of course on top of it they pay out dividends to all the people out there, 401ks, and because shareholders have been guaranteed a profit ever since 2010, Yeah, I mean, this is a vicious cycle. Everything I'm talking about, this is all vicious cycle. And this is all just, and by the way, this is all common sense. Anybody out there with just common sense, average intelligence can just look at this on its face and go, yeah, this is a big problem. It is a big problem. It's a gigantic mess. So yeah, so an insurance company, whether it's medical, auto, doesn't matter. Homeowners, doesn't make any difference. It has to take in more money in premiums than it pays out in claims. And it has to have enough to make the spread worth keeping the company around. If it doesn't have enough, then it needs a bailout, and they just print a bunch of money and just shove it into some banks through some opaque investors, move a bunch of money around through 5 or 6 different shell corporations, and the money just is completely laundered at that point. So now how similar is what's happening to the Romans and their financial system? It's near identical. It's near identical, except that the Romans, their currency was still made out of metal. Even if it was garbage metal, it was still made out of metal. The US dollar is the single most worthless currency that has ever existed in the history of mankind, because there is absolutely nothing supporting it except for a military running around, enforcing dollar hegemony. And it's a declining military on top of that, to the point where they can't recruit people anymore, right? I mean, it's like the joke, right? And this is reality, the joke all over the internet. The meme is like, oh my God, there must be a real war because they're trying to get white males to show up. Nobody is doing this, black or white, right? They're saying, no, get bent, dude. We're not doing that. We're not. I mean, like, who cares? I don't care about the borders of another country when my country's being invaded. More and more people are starting to think like that, so they are running into a real problem. And of course, not only that, I mean, who in their right mind would continue taking orders from any of those people in the Pentagon? I'm actually asking that seriously. I mean, you can wrap this video up, screenshot it, and send it to your military friends. Who in the world would take any orders from those people at this point? I'm not kidding when I ask that, because they know these are barely considered people, in my opinion, let alone good or honest or anything upright about them. No, most of these people are scumbags. So why would you take any orders from them? I'm just talking about, President Dingling, what's his name, Silver Alert, or President Red Flag. I'm just talking about those guys. I'm talking about like Joint Chiefs, and they're like, come on. No, these guys, sorry, these are not decent people at all. They're just not. I've just met too many military people that have nothing, privately speaking, right? And they never say it's publicly, but they have nothing nice to say to these people. So, yeah, I mean, they can't find that, so the only thing keeping it propped up is just military might, and that's slowly going away as people just stop caring, and they start saying, so the Roman Empire, same thing. It was apathy, and of course they couldn't keep paying the soldiers because they were running out of money, so they had to keep messing with the metallurgy of the coin. They had to keep, before it was clipping coins, before they put the ridges on the edges, and then after that it turned into, let's just start messing with the metal content, and before you know it, the gold content was nothing. I covered this a long time ago, and so that's what Jesus was so upset about, right? Josh, right? That's what he was so upset about when he went into the temple. It wasn't because the people were doing business. That isn't the problem. It was because they were actually ripping people off in the name of God by saying, God commands you to turn in your gold currency, your gold coins, and then we're going to give you these worthless garbage currencies. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what was happening. I have yet to run into, I have never heard a pastor of a megachurch ever preach on that, ever in my whole life. But that's exactly what was going on, and it was theft. It's theft then, it's theft now, and it's all just slowly deteriorating. So yeah, in terms of how similar is it? It's damn near identical, and very predictable. Which is why, if you go read The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Gibbon, it's like reading the future. You can just see all of this stuff happening. What do you think about them taking down coal-fired plants and selling them? Yeah, I know. I actually went to a coal-fired plant not that far away from here, in fact, and they were dismantling all of it and sending it over to China. Perfectly good coal-fired power plant that produced a lot of power. Produced, I want to say, something like 210 megawatts or something, which is a lot of power for those of you who are in the know. And yeah, they sold it all off, and because they wanted green energy in the U.S. There's no such thing as green energy. That's just not a thing. Not when you actually start breaking down what's involved to build all this stuff, and the amount of diesel burnt, and the amount of garbage it takes. Like that land ban thing, I mean, half that's pretty accurate. The amount of time it takes to do all that stuff, it's not worth it. The numbers just aren't there. There's better ways to go about it, and one of the best ways to go about it is to be more efficient. And efficiency is, then you have to talk to physicists about that. And all of your physicists, guys like me, are going to just say, no, this is a violation of laws of physics. You're going to have to do more work, and you're going to have to actually stop ripping people off. In other words, you can't have this 50% of GDP is just a scam. 50% of GDP is a bunch of middlemen. 50% of GDP is a bunch of worthless government employees and corporate oligarchs and corporatocracy and stuff. Like, that's all it is, just bureaucracy and nonsense. That's like 50% of GDP. There's no way to feed that baby. Okay? Like, well, then what do we do? Like, well, okay. If you want the real truth, well, then if 50% of the population were to just, I don't know, stay home and have kids, and then the other 50% of the population go and do work, not to get all sexist about it, but it's the truth. I mean, that's just reality, okay? And then, of course, then you have this built-in, system where you actually have kids. People are, preserving their genetic line as well. And again, this is not a race issue. This is just that's a people issue, right? Because it's built into you, right? It's built into you. That's why do you think there's an entire industry, a corn industry? Why do you think there's an entire industry that's focused on that? Because people are naturally, instinctively doing that without help. They don't need assistance. They will do it naturally. I can't go into like I can't quite say it the way that I would say it here on TikTok, because TikTok will freak out if I do. But it's already built in. That's already built in. That's hard coded into your DNA to want to propagate. That's just part of the deal, okay? So you don't really need to do that. What you need to do is you need to be able to have because I have yet to run into too many women that are they get the so-called dream job, and then 5 years later they're like, this sucks. Yes, it sucks. It sucks for men too. Dude, every dream. I have had the dream job, right? I personally have had a dream job, and after about 8 years, that sucked, and I was tired of it. Just reality, just how it works. She's paid by companies, insurance company to deny claims. Yeah, there's a couple of stories like that, actually. There was one just on TikTok just recently where there's some lady was talking about that very issue, that they're doing everything they can to, that's it. Their goal is to not pay out, because if they pay out, there is no way for them to cover all of those bets. Remember, insurance is just kind of like a casino. Unlike a casino has to cover all those checks. Insurance companies don't. Insurance companies are allowed to operate on a fractional reserve basis. It's because it's banking done in reverse. It's the same scam done in reverse. And they do not have to cover all those checks on the floor. So when they get a big wave of claims, they go find a way out of it. Do everything we can, pull out all the stops, find a way out of it, and just wear people down, wear them down, until you don't have to pay it, or until you pay them, until they just collapse. Especially people who need the money. This is what they're doing in the Carolinas right now with all of that. That's why they denied all those claims. Some of those people will sue eventually, the richer ones, the ones who can survive it, the ones who have maybe a vacation house and they can go some other place, they can go upstate or something like that, and they can stay in another house and they can sort of regroup and then file a lawsuit a year from now, and then fight it for 2 years in court until they finally get the insurance company to pay. Yeah, most people can't do that. Most people don't have that kind of juice. It's just like all the people who say oh, well, so-and-so police brutality. Oh my God, they beat somebody and then they spit on them and hit them and everything. And then they pistol whip some guy in the back of a squad car. They need to sue. Have you ever tried to successfully sue a city? Good luck with that. Try it out. I have friends personally right now have airtight cases against cities, and no lawyers will touch it. And I'm talking airtight cases. There is a mountain of not just evidence but proof, and it's dude, no, they still won't touch it because they'll never be invited to cocktail parties again, and they won't get to be judges. And if they don't get to be judges, then they won't be able to be superior court judges. If they don't get to be superior court judges, they won't eventually be an appellate court judge or some kind of federal judge or something like that, and make their way. That's exactly how it works. These guys are climbing the ladder, and their goal is to make sure that they fill the private prisons. One of these days I'll do a video. We'll do a live on that, on the whole private prison nonsense, because that's the one thing. It's one of the very few things out there that everybody is getting wrong. Like a lot of people are getting that wrong. You don't want private prisons. It's actually a bad idea because there's just bribery. I mean, didn't President Silver Alert, what's his name, that douchebag, he just pardoned 2 judges who were both found guilty of literally selling kids to the prison system. Yeah, so, people too stressed. Want me in places like this. I'm trying, man. I do the best I can. What happened with the Roman Empire? Couldn't recruit and conscript their own. Yeah, I mean, as with all things, eventually you run out of people to conscript. Eventually people flee, right? I mean, that's just what ends up happening. They start fleeing. They start doing everything they can to get away from it because there's just no point, right? Especially when you... there's a movie called Megalopolis. My vote is still out as to whether or not that's a good movie. I've seen it. I actually went back and I watched it again because I wanted to see, like, maybe I missed something with this. One of the things, though, that is right is a lot of the commentary on the Roman Empire, or not the Roman Empire, but empire in general. That stuff is pretty accurate. In that people start losing faith in it, and that's where a lot of people are at right now. They have lost faith, and I don't blame them because it was never meant. The U.S. was never intended to be an empire. It was never designed nor intended to be an empire. We've got capability of building generators of that quality. I don't know. You guys are having some kind of an argument. Sorry, I'm not trying to get into the middle of your guys' discussion. Yeah, airtight cases are big money, assuming you can actually get them all the way through a courtroom, and then assuming you can actually get them to pay out, which is another problem. It's another big issue. So assuming you can get them to actually pay you win the lawsuit, then you have to collect it. That's another problem too, and a lot of times that can be a big issue. Concept of sovereign immunity stops lawsuits against governments. Yeah, it is one of the it's why I have a big problem that I do with the Orange Man. I have a big problem with that whole qualified immunity nonsense. That shouldn't be a thing. That should never have been a thing. If you have to go around violating all people's rights and everything to do your job, then you probably need to consider a new career in, I don't know, piano tuning or something, whatever. I mean, just anything other than being a cop, because clearly, you don't have the temperament for that. Because if you're just trying to make a bust, then you're willing to just make up whatever you have to. Like, there was that guy in Florida, that cop in Florida that was found guilty of something like planting evidence on 200 people. It was a ton. 200 people's lives were completely destroyed by this guy. And of course, by extension, their families, people got divorced over it. It destroyed them financially, the whole bit. I mean, put yourself in that position, right? You've done nothing wrong, and some cop plants, literally plants, something on you, and then you get hauled into court, have your whole life turned upside down, lose your job, the whole bit, reputation. Now it's overturned, but what the damage is already done. How do you undo that? You don't. And the guy, he goes to jail. Sorry, that's not good enough for me. That is not good enough for me by half, dude. That's something dude, I'm full Vlad the Impaler on that one, dude. No. That needs to be dealt with very severely, because look what you did. You destroyed people, and you can't fix any of the damage, and there's no amount of money that will fix that, right? There's no amount of money that will fix someone who's gotten divorced over something 2-3 years ago, and they are remarried. There's no way to fix that, right? There's no way to unring that bell, so... Yeah. So, anyway, that's all I got and everything. And I hope that I was able to at least keep up with everybody as best I can. No, you're aware, but are you allowed to speak fifth generation warfare? I think it'd be difficult for me to be able to explain it on this platform. There isn't an actual uncensored platform. Former bird site. Maybe I'll do a live there sometime. I did a random one time, and something like 500 people showed up or something like that. I just, but it was just me, and it was like a 17-minute rant that I was just going on about, and nobody could talk to me. For whatever reason, there was a glitch in the system, and so I couldn't see anybody commenting. I just saw people watching. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and we will see you guys maybe next Saturday at 6 Central. Take care.